Hi, welcome back to Post TV live from NAB 2013. I'm Randy Altman, editor of Post Magazine. This is Mark Loftus, he's our senior editor.
Thanks for joining us.
We're here with Terry Curran, who is the president owner of AlphaDogs in Burbank, and we are here to pick his brain today. He's been roaming around and looking at things, and we're going to ask him about some gear. But first, do you want to talk about the events that you put on at your studio?
We have a monthly gathering called Editors Lounge in Burbank, and we've done this pre-NAB panel every year. So we just did our 10th annual pre-NAB panel, which is posted on editorslounge.com. And basically what we do is try to get a variety of different people, professionals in the industry from different parts of it together, and sort of, the impetus is to talk about what we think is going to be at NAB, but what it really comes down to is trends in the industry and so forth. And because pretty much none of the people on the panel are from manufacturers, we can speak the truth. So.
Yeah. Well, what I remember before the show was like, what do you expect out of NAB this year? And you're like, 4K will be everywhere.
Yes.
And yeah, you were right.
Yeah.
You were right.
Are you shooting in 4K?
Okay, so not everywhere.
No, but it's kind of a joke. I mean, I'm it's like the 3D. You remember how anti-3D I was years ago? I said it's a fad. Well, here we go. They're shoving the 4K down our throats, but there's not really workflows for it yet. It's you're talking about 4 times the HD data that we're already dealing with. How do you store that? How do you move it around? You go to the AJA booth and they have their Kona 3G playing out to a monitor, right? Well, the way they play out is over 4 SDI lines, okay? So now, if you're already wired in a facility for 1 or 2 lines of SDI, I'm sorry, you have to rewire your entire facility now to deal with that. I mean, things like that, are the nuts and bolts that are behind the curtain that most people don't think about or talk about, but that's the reality. I mean, the change of infrastructure. Oh, I'm going to buy all new monitors, you're going to have beefier CPUs, you've got to rewire your facility, and for what? Are we going to deliver 4K to home? How are you going to do that?
And that was kind of my question towards you now, is you're doing a lot of television work, a lot of reality TV, some of the lower formats. What does it mean to your facility, if anything at all?
Well, nothing yet. We'll see what happens. I mean, NAB runs in these 2-year cycles where 1 year they go, hey, this is the new thing, and then the next year it's like, oh, okay, here's how you actually work with it. So we have to wait till next year to see what comes out. It's going to have to be codecs that squeeze 4K down to the current bandwidth, and why are we doing 4K at that point?
Are there benefits from shooting in 4K, the higher resolution, and then kind of crushing it down to HD?
There's an argument to be made for oversampling. You have the larger image. When you squeeze it down, it looks better, et cetera. But there's a point where the human eye doesn't resolve differences anymore. And at the HPA Tech Retreat this year, there was one group that got up and they were showing, here's all these studies they've done with the average viewing distance and the average size of the theater of the screen, et cetera. And the difference, of course, between SD and HD to the human eye, to test audiences, was huge. The difference between HD and 4K was very minimal.
Wow.
Now, granted, if you walk right up to the theater screen and stood like this, and they did 2K and 4K, you'd be able to see the difference. But nobody sits like that. So once you get back and sit in your normal seat, you can't really resolve that difference. So it's kind of like, why are we all going to do this? Because the manufacturers need to sell more TVs. They're hurting in a big way, and 3D didn't do it for them, so now they're hoping this will do it.
On a more, I guess, specific shopping trip now, what are you looking for your immediate needs?
I didn't really come, looking for any specific thing. I tend to go to the little, little stalls in the back to try to see what's interesting and new and up and coming, because the big guys, what they're going to have. And this is kind of really a boring NAB this year. I don't know.
Well, you're an avid user. What did you think of their new announcements? The new Media Composer and the Pro Tools with the Media Composer engine inside?
I mean, they're little improvements. I would have called it 6.8, not 7 for Media Composer, but that's just me. Just pissed a bunch of people off, I'm sure. Anyways, but that's not really. Yeah, they're new things. I mean, the background transcoding, that's helpful. Like the cached audio waveforms is huge from a performance standpoint. We've only been asking for that for like 20 years, so it's nice to get that.
But now you have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, where I'm primarily finishing, I don't care so much about the audio. I need the color correction tools, and that hasn't changed in 15 years. So it's a little frustrating.
Trying to think. Last
But-
year it was. Oh, go on. Sorry.
Probably the biggest, the most interesting booth once again this year is Blackmagic. Okay, the 995 camera, which we can get back to in a second.
Yeah.
But Resolve and adding editing capabilities into Resolve. So while Avid's not fixing the color corrector in the Symphony, Blackmagic's sitting over there going, that's all right, we'll just add editing and finishing capabilities to the color corrector, and it's that's looking really promising. So, but the 995 camera that's a hot thing. I mean, I want one. You could probably want one.
Yeah. I know you're always interested in monitoring, but have you settled on something now, or
I bought
you need something now?
I bought the Sony OLEDs last year, so that's what we're using now. Nothing's beat that yet for me. For the blacks are just beautiful, etc. So the next step will be when more people get more OLED technology and do more with it. But LCD they can't go any further than they've gone. There's not really anywhere to go.
So OLED's the answer.
Yeah. So far. Unless there's something new.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you on the Blackmagic camera. This is a question for you guys. So this now throws Blackmagic, I think, into the consumer space.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are they going to handle that?
Yeah.
Well, we had Grant on the show, and he said he came up with the idea because he wanted a small camera with high resolution that he could shoot his kids with.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like, I'm going to go make that.
Right.
And then he did.
That's fine for him, but what happens when they get the demand,
Well, that's a good point.
And the consumers, consumers aren't used to, not being able to contact a company and say, hey, this isn't working right,
Yeah. Well, I think he expects pros to use it. I think he expects them to have pockets in each, cameras in each pocket and just pull out the one that you need for whatever shot,
mm-hmm.
which is kind of cool. But that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like in our universe, Blackmagic is kind of the company that, their tech support. Yeah. For a comparison, we had a Blackmagic card go down. When you can finally get a hold of them, it's like, well, send it in to us and we'll repair it and you'll get it back in, a couple weeks. And it's like, well, if I don't need the card, then I don't need it. Yeah, so I have to buy another card, basically. Yeah. With AJ, you call them up and it's like, okay, they FedEx one overnight. And you're up and running the next day. So, but that's Blackmagic, and their products are cheaper. So in the professional market, we kind of go, all right, we know we're trading off tech support for lower cost, okay? That's not going to fly in the consumer universe. So,
well, they have that camera, like you said, $995 consumer camera. It's certainly not a rental camera, and that's what Grant was saying.
Right.
They do have a 4K. They're previewing, I guess, the 4K camera also, too.
Nice little nudge to red there, huh?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's competitive, and
yeah.
The GoPro guys were by our booth yesterday too, and they had a real tiny 4K 15-frame camera, so not necessarily.
I'm buying one. If you go buy a booth and you register and the thing, you get $100 off.
$100 off, right?
Yeah.
So
it's like $300. How can you go wrong?
They're putting it in people's hands.
Exactly.
That's a good point. We're going to have to wrap it up in a minute or two, but what else? Anything else that you've seen or want to see or need that people have to make?
Axle Video is got some pretty good media asset management going on. I don't know if it's AXLE.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this first Cut Pro, I think they call it. It's way up in the North Hall. Often, it's one of those where you just find them by accident.
Yeah.
They have a really interesting review and approval thing that they're, everybody's trying to do that review and approval, but they actually have a really good one, and you can use it with Avid and Final Cut and whatnot, and all the notes that the client makes, they get back into the programs, even into Avid, and that's hard to do in Avid. So it shows up as locators on the timeline with the client's notes and all that. I thought that was pretty good, and they're a little startup company. So, anyways.
Fantastic. Terry, always a pleasure, always fun, always interesting.
Always getting in trouble.
Yeah, always getting us in trouble. Yeah, we do. What is that? Yeah, we're gluttons. But it's great. So thank you for coming. Thanks for sharing. You're always a contributor to the magazine and always there when we need to pick your brain. So I appreciate that. So thank you for coming and taking the time. And,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I'm Randy Altman, Mark Loftus, Terry Curran from AlphaDogs, and we will be back shortly with more Post TV Live from NAB 2013.